Hello there, I'm with Dave Vousden today, and I asked Dave to come along so that he could explain a little bit more about the Salvestrols. I stock them, I take them, and I'd like to know a little bit more, Dave. Why did you import them from the UK in the first place?
Well, it was very simple, really. I had pancreatic cancer diagnosed and I didn't want to die. So I was really, really interested to find out what other alternatives there were to the treatment that I'd had previously, which for a bladder cancer I'd had chemo and surgery. And then I had a colleague who I'd worked on and off with for the last 30 years who contacted me from the UK. He had no idea that I had cancer, but he wanted to tell me about the work he'd been doing with these Salvestrols, which are phytonutrients. And I wasn't interested at all until I realised that, well, when you're told if it's going to go like they expect it to, I've got 20 weeks to live.
Wow, it was that. How long ago was that?
That was almost 6 years ago. I'm 5 years clear now. But I was very reluctant. I'd been in the industry for many years, 30 odd years running a pharmaceutical company. So I've been working on both sides of the fence, both with plant-based products as well as medicines. But it was when we realised that what we were talking about, the phytonutrients, these are active substances that have always been in our food. They're in all forms of plants, but over the years they're bred out, and that's when I started to really get interested. And of course, I'm still here to tell the story.
Very much so.
Very much so. So we actually started by finding 10 people that had cancers. It didn't matter what sort of cancer, what medications or treatments they'd been having. We just wanted to see if there was going to be any change. And the first 6 we took from hospices. Now, out of those 10 people, 5 are still alive. Wow. 3 died of natural causes, and 2 of the others, their family told us that there was nothing that could be done. We start to help themselves to get better by changing their lifestyle, and in particular the foods they were eating, trying to go organic and just being sensible, having a great attitude. Then they step in with medical intervention and have chemo and radiotherapy. And both patients that did pass away. We got an extra 18 months out of their lives, but they both told me that they'd made a terrible mistake. And even one of the oncologists was not very happy about, whilst he was away, someone offering radiotherapy, which didn't help this lady.
Yeah. Now, I've got a number of clients who take the Salvestrols, even though they are taking or having chemo, because again, that's a person's choice. But if you're taking the Salvestrols with the chemo, I understand that it actually does help the situation insofar as it lowers any symptoms. Is that right?
It helps with the recovery, lessens the side effects, and in particular, if taken with a fatty acid product such as IQ or the ethanol, my previous work back in the 90s, we showed that it lessened radiation burns. And where we did the research at Oxford University Medical School, they cut short the trial so very quickly after about 5 weeks, because we could see by having fatty acids, it lessens the actual radiation burns. But also, at that time, we didn't know Salvestrols or anything about them. They hadn't been discovered. But what we have found was, in the unrefined evening primrose and the fish oils, the sterols are in their natural form. Those sterols, when combined with Salvestrols, help the blood cells to become less sticky. They actually help with the blood flow, and we have lots and lots of clinical evidence to show that they stop the metastasis of cancers. So the recovery is so much better.
Brilliant. Now, people do sort of balk to a certain extent when they first, hear how expensive they are. But can you explain to my clients exactly why they are rather more expensive than the average thing?
Right. If we compare them to, say, the drug that they're talking about for melanoma at the moment, which works out, it used to be $16,000 a month, and we had a number of people we've been working with who had been on that medication. $16,000 a month. Now it's down, they're talking about $4,000. If we look at Salvestrols, we're looking at, $1.90 per capsule.
It's
if we put it into that form.
Yeah.
No, but to produce one capsule, it's the equivalent of 20 kilograms of food. So to put it into a nutshell for us, where we're using our citrus peel, we need 1 ton of peel to get between 5 and sometimes, if we're lucky, 700 grams of the actual actives of Salvestrols. So we would go through a couple of thousand tons to get enough extract. And it's the same out of the olives and the grapes that we use after the processing. And the reason we use foods that have already been processed is because of the cost. If we had to purchase, like we did in the early days, actual food and fruit, all of a sudden the values went up and our cost of goods went through the actual roof. But one of the other reasons is that here in Australia here in New Zealand and in Australia, we finance children with brain and other cancers, and we treat them for free. And we've made a commitment to help those children up until the age of 18. So we do finance all our own clinical work and all of our research here in New Zealand. In particular, we work with the Crown Research Labs, and we have been extracting Salvestrols. We're about to ramp it up to do that commercially. We have no financial help whatsoever, both in our clinical research and in the food processing research. And very shortly we're about to undertake some studies with Department of Food Technology at Otago University, as well as other places around the world.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about the fact that you've got to have so much fruit and veg. Do these come from what they call heritage plants?
We try and get them from heritage. In New Zealand, we're very, very lucky. We've found a source of citrus from fruits that have been squeezed. So they're like our oranges at home. They're green, they're yellow, they're orange. They are not what we would call table or supermarket ready. So we do look for the heritage as much as we can, or organic. And the organic have 30 to 40 times more Salvestrols than the traditional. Now, I'll put it into perspective for you. I'm going off a beaten track here.
Go for it, Dave.
Recently, as last October, the New Scientist published an article written by a very good investigative journalist in the UK, where they were analysing foods from the 1950s through to the year 2010. And it was very, very good, very subjective, but there were 3 things that really stood out. And the most important one was where they looked at broccoli, from what you got in 1950 to what we get today, to make the florets all the same size, the colours, the flavours and everything else. Almost 81% of the sulphur compounds, which are known to have cancer-fighting properties, have been taken out from the broccoli. Now, that is just broccoli.
Yeah. When you say taken out?
Bred out.
Out. Right.
Yeah, and that is to make it so that when it's picked, they can vacuum pack, gas it, so we have a long shelf life.
And we're talking GM, modified?
A lot of them are GM modified,
okay.
And that's just one. That's just broccoli.
Yeah.
Then you start to look at milk. Milk used to come from the cow.
Yeah.
That was it. It wasn't mucked around with.
So,
we also know with some of the meats that we eat. In New Zealand, we're very lucky. The article shows how grain-fed is nowhere near as good as what we have with our grass-fed animals, in particular for a lot of vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and in particular the fatty acids, and in particular the omega-3s, which are trace amounts.
Yes.
And as I alluded to at the beginning of our conversation, those trace amounts we used to get in our diet, and we estimate 10% of what we got 100 years ago. And that is why we're seeing the problems that we had. And I think I could really summarise it by Professor Hugh Sinclair, a brilliant doctor and scientist who in 1947 tried to set up a Department of Nutrition at Oxford University, and he was told that it's not the sort of thing that they want to be involved with. They've got a cure for every known disease to mankind, and it will be a white elephant within 5 years. Now, at that time, rationing was still going on in the UK, so you could only get brown flour, brown sugar. Advised to lightly steam your vegetables, eat them with the skin on, etc., etc. But Hugh wrote the longest letter ever published in the Lancet, even to this day, in 1956, where he was talking about the processing and the changes of food, and in particular the growing and the reduction of the micronutrients. And those micronutrients we now know as vitamins and minerals, and in particular Salvestrols, which were yet to be discovered. And in my own personal work in the 90s, we touched very closely on the Salvestrols, in particular one called beta-cisterol, which is in a lot of our staple foods, or it was, it's been bred out now, but beta-cisterol rapidly produces the fatty acids to produce the prostaglandins, which play a role in every function of our body. And our prostaglandins are also affected by a lack of Salvestrols, these other sterols.
So in other words, even if you haven't got cancer, but you want to have just a far better sort of upgraded healthy intake of foods, the Salvestrols would still be a useful addition.
Very, very useful. And, you know, we get often being asked, we have a lot of people whose families have had a success with change of lifestyle and Salvestrols with their serious diseases such as cancer, and they take them on the preventative side. If we look at a preventative, you're looking at 3 capsules per week. Now, most people would take 1 a day, but you need 3 a week, and it's just boosting up what we're getting from our diet. As I say, if we go back 50 years ago, we got far more of the nutrients in our food. I mean, a classic example is bread. Why would you want to put fatty acids, vitamins, minerals and amino acids back into bread? My question is, why did we take them out in the first place?
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Dave, because I think that's probably answered a lot of questions that a lot of people have had. And anything else that you would like to share with my clients so that they just sort of feel more comfortable? Or if you...
Yeah, I would just say that if you contact Judith, we can give you links to some of these papers. The New Scientist article is really, really good to read because it poses a lot of questions. It's very fair and balanced. And I will say, in the defence of changes to the food, we do eat far more vegetables and fruits than what we did many years ago. But our problem is we do eat a lot out of season. So common sense has to come into this. But, you know, we're available to share information. We're also interested in other people's journeys as they go through with some of these serious illnesses. Stress is one thing that we've all been talking about, and not the easiest thing to recognise with ourselves, but there are many, many things, and stress can be relieved, as can many illnesses, by a good oxygen intake. It's like walking up 2 or 3 flights of stairs every day. So, we're here to help and share any of the stories or information that we have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you for watching, and I really do recommend that if you have any questions at all, contact me, or I will leave Dave's information there too, and in the email it will accompany this. So keep healthy and keep asking those questions, and make sure you know exactly what you're putting into your mouth.
Bye.
Bye-bye.